Anniversary, because 70 is a very important number in Bible chronology, we know, and I'm going to be 72 this year. I must say, in my pram, aged 18 months, I didn't note the foundation of the SPBI, although it had many effects on my life, almost from the word go, because Reverend C.S. McKelvey was a close friend of my father and used to come be a speaker at the church where my father was minister. So as I was growing up, always Mac and others, I won't go into all their names now, but they were speakers who came, and I had a child like him. He had a way with children, and everybody, I think, he was and his wife, of course. So as time went along, and then a little bit later on, my sister came along. She's 3 years younger than me. She's here with us now. Mac dedicated her to the Lord. So natural later on, going along, that Mac, we asked him to marry, which he did. He conducted our wedding service. Nige and I actually announced our engagement here at Leigh at an SPBI conference. So I'll shut up, but you can see that there's a lot of intertwining of personal family life and of the SPBI. But we're here to preach the word just at the minute, as God's people right now here today. And if you bear with me, we will just have a little Bible reading from Exodus chapter 4, and we'll look at just there verses 1 to 20. There's quite a long account there of what transpired at the burning bush. It goes on for a couple of chapters, and it's all very illustrative of things. But we haven't got time to read all that, so I thought I'd just read Exodus chapter 4 verses 1 to 20, and then we'd launch into the subject. You know your Bibles well, I know most of you, but it gets us focused in on the right bit of Holy Writ. Exodus chapter 4 verses 1 to 20 says this: "And Moses answered God, and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, The Lord hath not appeared unto thee. And the Lord said unto him, What is that in thy hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it. And the Lord said unto Moses, Put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, hath appeared unto thee. And the Lord said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto thy voice, thou shalt take of the water of the river, pour it on the dry ground, and the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech, and of a slow tongue. And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. And thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth, and with his mouth and will teach you what ye shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. And thou shalt take this rod in thy hand, wherewith thou shalt do signs. And Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray thee, and return unto my brethren which are in Egypt, and see whether they be yet alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. And the Lord said unto Moses in Midian, Go, return into Egypt, for all the men are dead, which sought thy life. And Moses took his wife and his sons, set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. As I say, there's a lot more there you could read with profit, and no doubt some of us will again, but that's the area of the Bible that I want to get our text out of, because the subject for the afternoon address is this: the Lord said unto him, What is that in thy hand? And he said, A rod. We all thank God for 70 years. Thank God for all the leading. But we always stand looking into the future and think, how are we going to get on from here? And the question is often a puzzle, and sometimes a worry. Can be a great worry to some people. And Moses here is at a point in life where there's something to be done, and it's obviously a bother to him and a worry. How is it going to be? You know the story, the events at the burning bush. There was a nation of people, it was the Israel people, and they were living in slavery in the land of Egypt. God actually knew and cared. He'd come down in person to free them. And now God was sending one man who he'd chosen with the good news that he'd come down and it was time for deliverance. But he, the one man, didn't really want to go. He wasn't a fully willing volunteer, as he goes through his list of excuses. And he comes out with lots of them. They won't believe me. How will I manage? And so we read there in Exodus 4 and verse 1, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice. For they will say, The Lord hath not appeared unto thee. And the Lord said unto him, What is that in thy hand? And he said, A rod. And I want to say, in a sense, don't we face a very similar situation today? There is a nation of people out there, and they're the Israel people, and they are living to a large extent in slavery. We don't need to enlarge on that. What they're enslaved to, of world systems and disbelief and satanic attack, they are living in slavery. And it's still true that God knows all about that, and he cares all about that, and he's definitely come down to deal with the problems of Israel on earth, and for other people through Israel. His love is tremendous, his salvation is wonderful. God knows about it, and God cares, and God has come down to do something about it. And now God is sending, or say one person, because I want to make this personal, it's me, or it's you. God has got some people that he wants to go and take the good news about his care and what he's going to do about things. And too often we don't really quite want to go in the way that God wants us to go, and we come out with this list of reasons why we can't or shouldn't, or somebody else, or you know what I'm saying. And that's what happens. They won't believe me. How will I manage? But God has a message back for us if we take that tack with him. I'll say it as an aside. For a man who couldn't argue and make a case, he's making a jolly good argument with God, isn't he? we won't dwell on that. But I'm amazed how eloquent Moses and how daring he is in the presence of the Almighty. He's not lost for words or for reasons. Well, that we must ask our own hearts where we fit in that one. But he was pretty eloquent with that. But the answer comes back from God, and God turns it around and says, well, look, here's what I've got to say about all that. What is that in your hand? And he looks and he's got his shepherd's job to do, and he's got his staff, and the answer is a rod. What is that in thy hand? And he said, a rod. He just put it in common terms, a stick. I've got a stick. Well, big deal, people would say. What use is a stick, a rod, going to be on the one side with all the Egyptian power, on the other their army, their wealth, their all their eloquent, all their learning, all that Egypt was. And if you've studied archaeology, you know Egypt was a superpower in its day. And God says, well, you'll be all right, you've got a stick. Well, that's it, isn't it? That's it, I'm stuck with a stick. But as you go, you'll do fine, God says, with the stick. And if you follow the story, you find he does do fine with the stick. Because God's going to use the stick. And it's going to be quite enough to meet everything that he's going to meet along the way. So he's going to do it in faith, and he's going to do it in God's purpose. So God's saying to us about this whole situation, what's in your hand? That's what I want you to have a look at. You've got to, we go home, search our heart, look at our life, and say, well, what is in my hand? I'll dwell on that a little bit in this talk. What's that in your hand? And the message that comes straight away at the beginning is this: look, God can use anything. It doesn't matter what's in your hand. In a sense, God can use anything. So I jotted down here quickly, because preachers like threes. 3 things that people found in their hand that God used at the time, and how strange they are, and yet how they were just the thing that was needed. The first one I wrote down, before we come back to Moses, well, how about Samson, who's got a job on, and he finds a rotten old smelly, moist jawbone of an ass, recently dead. Now, you know the tropics, when it gets here the meat goes off, and so what's he going to use? I says, that'll do. What comes to hand? Oh, a smelly, a recently dead jawbone of an ass. The last thing you'd ever think of to do any great work for God. But he found him, this is Judges 15:15, he found a more moist jaw. It wasn't even just a jawbone of a moist jawbone of an ass, and he put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. We won't enlarge on that, that's what the Bible says happened. Now here's another great man of Israel. He's faced with a man called Goliath. What's he got? What's he going to find to hand? Well, we cut the story short, get to the chase, as they say in America. He's got a sling, his shepherd's sling, and he gets 5 little round pebbles out of the brook. 1 Samuel 17 verse 40. He took, it says David, his staff, he took his rod, so that's back on the subject of the rod. He took his staff in his hand, he chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook. His sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. You know the story, how under God that was quite enough to do the job. Whole national armies had stood there for days, shouting at each other, marching up and down, insulting. God had been insulted. Goliath, this mighty man. And David, under God, uses, what's that in your hand? Well, he did have a rod, but he had the sling as well. And that trajectory of that stone, the all slow, perfect. Whatever he was wearing, it tells you what the defensive wear was, but there was a little gap in it, right where his bones weren't too solid, and that little stone under God went through the gap, and it had never entered into his head, Goliath, what God was going to do. But it entered into his head, and it killed him dead. And then, you know, David took Goliath's sword He hadn't got one of his own, but he borrows Goliath's sword, cuts off his head. What's that in your hand? It's going to be enough. God says, what's that in your hand? And then we pick 3, because preachers love 3s. How about 5 loaves and 2 fishes? What have we got here? Thousands of people desperately hungry out in a desert place. The rumbling tummies of Israel, who'd heard the wonderful words of Jesus, but really did now need some natural bread. And it says there, Jesus says in Matthew 14, what have we got to hand, he says. They say to him, we have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, bring them hither to me. Now that's the secret. Whatever it is, bring them hither to me, let God touch it and work with it. And that's the secret. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and he looked up to heaven, he blessed, he brake, and he gave the loaves to his disciples, and his disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled, about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And they took up 12 baskets, we know, of leftovers. What a miracle. What was to hand? What a situation with all those people. And yet what was to hand under God, when God touches it and the disciples distributed it, they had to touch it too. They got in on the ministry of this. And I remember my father preaching on this, and my dad said, you know, when Jesus touched the bread and he broke it, the miracle started. It sort of multiplied in his hand. Believe that, the Bible says it. Dad said, I think it went on multiplying in the hands of the disciples. Because if you work out how long it would take for him to break off 5,000 pieces, they'd die of hunger before he got to number. He said, common sense tells me he started it, gave it to them, and the miracle went on happening. Now, of course, the Bible doesn't tell us for sure that. If you think about it, it's common sense, because 5,000 at one a minute, well, it's days, isn't it? But 5,000 people got fed. That's the key thing, because Jesus touched it, but I guess the disciples saw some miracles happening as they went along. And we're expecting that too. That's what I'm trying to say, that God does miracles, yes, but God lets us in on his miracles. Yes. And we get to see something, because that's what Israel's role, that's how we're called to do this. We're called to believe God for things that only God can do. And it's our ministry to be involved in witnessing and dealing with problems in the world. So that's it, that's the third one then. So the truth is that God is not limited by our few natural things. He can use, and he will use, just about anything, and he's going to use what you actually find you've got to hand. It's not impossible, it's not in the far country, God says, what's that in your hand? Let me touch that, and we'll see what's going to happen next. And that's the miracle. If you give it to him in faith, and use it in faith, we will see miracles, and that's how we're going to manage as we go, because God doesn't change. So God's asking me, and he's asking you as individuals to say, well, have a think about it, have a look, what is in your hand. And it's exciting for us to consider what God will use if we let him. And I have to say, well, what is in my hand then? This is all very basic stuff and common sense. What can be in my hand? Well, one thing that can be in my hand is that. Just a pen, just a pencil. But in my hand and given into God's work, what can God do with it? Well, Psalm 45 verse 1, the writer there says, my tongue is the pen of a ready writer. Thank goodness David got busy with, I don't know what sort of pen he had, it wasn't a Parker, I don't know, but whatever he did have, thank goodness the Holy Spirit moved on David. Not only could he go out and fight Goliath with just a sling, but by the Holy Spirit God got busy with his pen. He also got busy designing the temple and passing on. He got busy sorting out the finances for the temple, handing on the wealth. All the things that came through David's hand, as he did one thing, God led him on to do another one, and he went from strength to strength. But we certainly have got a pen, and pens can write letters to people. people you might not see. Pens give you the chance to consider what you want to see. If you get caught out, you're not eloquent, at least you can tear the thing up, rewrite, but you can send that letter to somebody, you can witness to God's truth, you can tell them something you know in faith. So I'll come back to this in a minute, but for a slightly different angle, but look at the pen in your pocket and in your hand when God's asking me and you, what's in? Well, we've got a pen. We start with that. I didn't actually bring them up here, put something suitable for preaching. My car keys might have been, my car key, you can get that in your hand, can't you? And if you've got a car key, that means you can take somebody with you. You've got a car, you've got another seat. And when you go to a meeting, you've got someone you can ask and say, would you like to come with me? There's something interesting, something I think you might like to hear. And we can take the car key and use it for God. This is so simple, and yet so often we're fearful of doing that. Well, can't really ask them. This person might say something a bit off them, a bit extreme. And then what will I do? But under God, God says, what's that in your hand? There's a car key there. And I could go on, it's your front door key. Having someone in your house. We British, as you know, are very reserved. We don't easily get people in our house. But my Bible talks about Christians, and I'm sure for Israel as a nation, it says, be given to hospitality. Be given to hospitality, not something you're pushed in a corner to do when nobody else will do it. Not something you do as a last resort. I really don't want to do it, but I suppose somebody better, so I would better ask them round. God's saying to us, look, what's that in your hand? I've got my door key, I've got my kettle, I've got my bread knife, whatever, but it's a wonderful thing if we can understand and do it for God in the way that He means, that I'm going to use those simple things of life that's God given me, dedicated and used in God's ministry to make someone welcome, make somebody feel invited, and when they're relaxed, tell them about something you know about God. And we could all have testimonies of people where that's happened, it's been blessed, but you've certainly got your front door key given to hospitality. It says it twice, it's in Romans 12, it's in 1 Timothy chapter 3, so there's two witnesses to that. Not enough given to hospitality going on. In the world we've got a little defensive, we're afraid to ask people round. And then, well, I won't go, this is childish in a way, but normally I'd have my purse, my wallet, and the man on the road, the Good Samaritan, he got 2 pence out, didn't he? There are things we can do with our wallet to help people who are in trouble. Put the purse in there, I'll pay you the rest when I come back. Well, it goes on from giving to hospitality to the next mile, isn't it? Going the second mile in dealing with problems and things we find. But you know, as Christians, I think we do get too defensive about the message and about the gospel, the pattern of behaviour. But God says, look, how are you going to manage? What's that in your hand? A simple thing, give it to me. Do it in my name, definitely, and there will be an increase. Now, I just want to make this point. It's so simple. You say, well, you sort of made it already, but I'll make it once more. If you look at Exodus, those who've got a Bible and want to look at Exodus 4:20. Exodus 4:20 says this. It says, and Moses took the rod of God in his hand. Now, you know, at the start of the story, it was Moses' rod. What's in your hand? Oh, I've got a stick. I've got a rod. Right, you've got a rod. But when it stops being a rod and starts being the rod of God, I've now got it. There's a different complexion on it, isn't it? It took the rod of God. Well, if my pen stops being my pen and starts being the pen of God, if my front door key stops being my front door key and becomes the front door key of God, You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If our faith moves to that, so that all these simple things that God gives us in our life, blessings and abundances and abilities, if we can really get that into our mind. Moses, I'm sure he didn't yet understand when he took the rod of God what he was really holding, but as you read on through when you read on what happened when he gets busy with the rod of God, with God telling him a few things to do with it, God wants to get that into our mind as we go home, that these things that we've got, the most simple thing, God says, now look, give them to me, what's in your hand, but understand they are now mine. I'm blessing them, I'm touching them, you're holding them, but they're my possession too, those simple things. And that's going to make all the difference. Now, I could go on and on, I won't, time is not, but you can pursue this through the woman who's got the bit of meal in the jar with Elijah. We won't go there, but you know it's the same story. You can do it with all the Jewry of Egypt, their looking glasses, which they hand over to the Israelites and say, please go, take all these back wages with you, take all these looking glasses. And Israel, going out in the desert, it's not long before they get fed up with carting all this heavy metal, and they're just happy to hand it over and turn it all into the tabernacle. It's going to be melted down and turned into foundation. But whatever it was, the most simple things, it's all going to be in God's hand. It's going to fit and be just right for what they're going to need as the plan goes along. And even Joseph of Arimathea's tomb, it was already there, wasn't it? So that there would be a resurrection site, not a tomb. We know it. It was where the stone was rolled away, but he was willing to give even that and how God used it. We won't dwell on that because we must move on. But it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a jar or something in a cupboard, whether it's a looking glass, whether it's a tomb newly hewn out of the rock. But God touches things and does miraculous things with them. Now, if God can use natural things in our hand, we move on to the next point. How much more can he use spiritual things which are put into our hand? And God has given us a most powerful spiritual rod, which even Moses didn't have at the time. And if God says to me, what's that in my hand? And I'm not going to start off with my pen. Those things are really can be used, but the thing that comes to mind most first and greatest is the Word of God, the Bible. God has put something spiritual in our hand. Now, of course, Moses, the man we're focusing on, of course, Moses was pretty instrumental in getting a lot of what's in here as time went on and God gets busy with his Moses. You remember, there was no written Bible before Moses. Stop and think about it. There's no written, there's not a word in here I'm aware of for sure that they had. And the very first words in my Bible that were given by God were the 10 Commandments up the mountain. And Moses didn't write them, God wrote them. So God gets it started, handwriting this Bible that's coming to us, and he does it. And so Israel was to be his witness. Well, there was no Israel. Not as a nation. Until Israel became formally a sovereign nation, delivered of God out of Egypt, this ministry of the scriptures couldn't go forward in the same way. But the moment God had a nation ready and delivered and brought out of Egypt, in the first month, straight away, God gets busy with the revelation of the scriptures. He said, up the man, come on. And God makes the point to get it started. He says that he writes the 10 Commandments. Because we know the story, it had to be done twice. But it was done twice. And the story goes on from there. But so Moses didn't have this in it. When he went down into Egypt with his rod, he didn't have his Bible, didn't have his New Testament, didn't even have his Old Testament. He had a rod. But we have this rod of God, which is so much more that we can use. So David had no sword when he went to Goliath, but we have a sword. We know this is a sword. The Bible, the very word of God. I tell you, for us, it is the rod of God. And God wants us, when he says this, what's that in your hand? He expects us, when we say the rod to have this rod, and this is the most powerful rod of God. Now, I'll say this carefully because we're BI audience. Are you using the Bible as the rod of God? Well, a lot of people would say, well, I didn't even know it was a rod. Well, we should do, but we do know that. It is a rod. The trouble is that too many people have stopped really using the Bible as the rod of God. What do I mean? How is the Bible a rod? Well, again, it's preachers like making these sorts of points, but how is it a rod? I tell you this, first of all, God would say to you, it's a fishing rod. I mean, this sounds like church gospel sermon, I know, but it is a fishing rod. I'll make you fishers of men, and our job, I used to do some fishing when I was younger. In the end, I hadn't got the patience for it. I sat too many hours waiting for the fish in the natural. But God said, no, I'll make you fishers of men, and I can't give that up, can't be impatient with that. But God has given us a fishing rod, and it's our job to make sure the hook's well baited with interesting things we say to people. It's too easy to say like, oh, they won't believe me. I've put that cast in there for you, nobody. But God says, no, look, patience, repeating, keep on. The Bible is to be a fishing rod. It's a very effective fishing rod, and we are the fishermen. And the fisher lady is to go and make sure that we bait that hook with things which are edifying, attractive, that we don't drive people away with our attitude, or we're sure they're not going to believe before we say, well, of course they won't if we say that, because God's looking for, it's God's rod. It's God's rod. And if you say the thing thinking that I'm going to say something now out of the Bible, and I'm saying it because it's God's fishing rod, well, it might not seem to work straight away, but God would encourage us not to get stuck at that point. Use it as a fishing rod. And so John 8:31, if you continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, and other people that we witness to. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it's a measuring rod. Very important. It is God's measuring rod, and we have to use it as that, because we meet opinions of people who tell us all sorts of things in the world today. But our job is to use this rod of God as a measuring rod to measure up what they're saying against what God said, in a very loving way, in a very definite, quiet way, just to point out to people, well, that doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the measures of God's measure of the measuring rod. And in the Bible, you keep meeting men with measuring rods, don't you? If you like the prophets, in Revelation, in Ezekiel, you keep coming across characters that are wandering around with measuring rods in their hand, and you keep getting told to go and measure things. And of course this has meaning in prophecy, and some of us like to study the meanings in prophecy of the lengths and the heights, and it's a very interesting study, but it's not given to us just for our an amusement. Of course there is an interpretation of all that, and our job is to explain to people the purposes of God in history, that God is measuring things out. And the only way you can tell them about that is by quietly mentioning some of the things the Bible says in its measuring rod facility, because it is a very powerful measuring rod. There stood, Revelation 11:1, and there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of God. What a prophetic ministry we have, that we can say to people things that God knows the end from the beginning, and he's measured things out. We can bring hope, and we can bring guidance, we can bring revelation into people's lives by using the Bible as a measuring rod. And then in Ezekiel 40, Ezekiel's told, declare all that thou seest to the house of Israel. That's who you've got to tell. So it's no different that God's saying that to us. Use your Bible as a measuring rod and tell them about my prophetic measures and how God is counting out these things. And declare all that thou seest to the house of Israel, and in the man's hand a measuring reed of 6 cubits long, and he measured. And he measures everything. Goes on for 8 chapters, doors, windows, entrances, courts, and it's quite a study if you want to look at that. So, but are we using our Bible as a measuring rod? And in any case, are we measuring everything in life up against what it says? We should be, because that's the true measure of truth. Does it fit with God's measures? And the world has moved so far from the measures of God, you almost wonder if they're using the same measuring system. Well, they're not, are they? But it's our ministry as God's witnesses to talk to the world about the Bible as his measuring rod. And, well, jump over the next one because time's getting away. Let's just do this one quickly because we're here. It's a fruiting rod. Fruiting rod. There's this big argument goes on about who ought to be in the priesthood, who God had called to particular roles in Israel. And they decide they'll sort it all out under God. It's going to be a competition of rods. Because they all bring your rod, we'll lay it all up before God, and we'll come back tomorrow and see whose rod has borne fruit. And you know the story, because the question was all about, was Aaron taking on too much? Was it, the people getting jealous? God has a right to choose. People don't give God the right to choose. They think they can choose. They don't want to give God the right to choose. God says, I'll choose Levi and I'll choose the house of Aaron, but I'm choosing, and each choosing of his narrows things down to who God says, I want to do that. I never understand this. You know, most people I know think they have a right to choose who they're going to marry. Big decisions in life, they wouldn't want to let somebody else do it. No, they have the right to choose, but they don't think God's got the right to choose. But one of the things we have to learn is God has the right to choose. Amen. And when he chooses, his choices are right. And we just say, bless the Lord, we go along with that, you know best. That's a big lesson in life. But anyhow, the fruitful rod, they were very up, they got it all. Aaron, you're taking too much on yourself, man. So they have the competition, if you call it that. God says, bring all the rods, put them in, we'll lay them up before the Lord. And the Lord will show you who's got what's the right answer to this. Is Aaron taking on too much? What happens? Right? You read it in Numbers 17 verses 5-8. It shall come to pass that the man's rod whom I shall choose shall blossom. That's the test. And it says, it came to pass on the morrow, behold, the rod of Aaron was budded and blooms and yielded almonds. I like that. God doesn't do things by half. He set the level of, we'll go for blooming, but no, they've got to nuts. They've got almonds. It's bloomed, it's blossomed, it's fruited, it's made nuts, and it's fruitful. That's the answer to the question. And it's the same answer to the question of ministry, because this is the test of ministry. Is it fruitful for God? If it's God's ministry, it will be fruitful for God. And that's the encouragement I'm bringing us all today. God says, look, a man's ministry maketh room for him, and Satan's always trying to box us into a corner. No, they won't believe me. God says, yes, they will. What's that in your hand? Oh, it's a rod. But when God touches the rod, it blossoms, it blooms, and there's going to be fruit. They shall come again, bearing precious sheaves, if they're busy doing the ministry. And God says, look, I wasn't fibbing, I wasn't lying when I said that. I want you just to understand this. Sometimes it takes a while. I go out in the garden in cold weather in February, wind shrieking, I'm cold, I'm wet, but I'm putting seeds in. And then sometime later on, of course, there's a harvest. God says, I want you, in the natural you understand that, in the spiritual I want you to understand that, because this Bible that we're to use as a rod, we're letting God touch it, that there will be fruit. That's the proof of if there is ministry there will be fruit. God has promised it. Some 30-fold, some 60-fold, some 100-fold. And so that's the simple test. So God don't stop looking at the Bible as a rod. Understand it's a fishing rod, and it's certainly a fruiting rod. And I'll read you Isaiah 11 here. There shall come forth. I mean, it certainly was in the life of Jesus, wasn't it? That's the point I've got here. Isaiah 11, 1-4. There shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. Looks all dead, but now there's going to be a great fruiting rod springing up out of this. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And with righteousness he will judge the poor and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth. It's the same thought going along with this word of God. His word, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. So in Jesus' case, it is a fruitful, this word of God, it's a fruitful rod. And the reason why it's a fruitful rod is because he was willing to suffer what men would do to him with their rods. You read this one in Micah 5 verse 1. And again, there's a lesson in this because, all right, we want to use the Bible, this is God's rod, but we've got to be willing. They might smack us a few times with a rod. You might get smitten a bit. You might have to put up with some things. God is looking for people who are willing to even suffer for this ministry. And it's, again, we shrink back from that. But listen, why is Jesus' ministry so fruitful? Because this is what he was willing to do. Micah 5 verse 1, they shall smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek. He's smitten. And he who is got this all-powerful word of God, he had to suffer the contradiction of men, it says somewhere in the New Testament, things he put up with in it to make this ministry, because he looked forward. And God is saying to us, well, look, you've got this ministry, but it is costly. You've got to be willing. And we have to say, we have to look in our heart and say, well, we're soldiers in God's army. You are my weapons of war. Well, if soldiers in an army have to suffer a bit, they have to be under discipline. And so God is saying, I'll use this, but you've got to understand, and we've got to be willing to do the things that Jesus did, our captain of the Lord of hosts. And so that's what it says. Micah 5 verse 1, they shall smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek. But that, and the very next line goes on into the Christmas, but thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though there will be little among the thousands of Judah, out of thee shall he come forth to me. I like that. It's an aside, but it's not saying that he came forth to us. God's saying when Jesus came out of Bethlehem, he was actually coming forth to God as well, and primarily. And he shall come forth to me, that is to be the ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. So this rod is a living rod, and it bears fruit instantly. And he shall see the travail of his soul and be satisfied. That's the thing about fruitfulness. He shall see the travail of his soul and be satisfied. And I tell you this, if we use the rod in the way God intends us to use it, we'll see and be satisfied. And he certainly will, because that was God's intended method for this to work. I'm just going to check what my time is, make sure I'm all right for the minute. Okay. Now, all right, so we got that point straight. So, next point, the rod can become anything that God wants it to be, or it needs to be. It's amazing, this. It is a rod. I've had a rod here. I should have bought a broom handle or something as my visual aid.
Nice stick in the corner.
All right. Also there is. Stick in the corner. It's not as long as I need. But anyhow. But it can become, this is the thing, you've only got a rod. You've only got a rod. I don't know, you men, you go to your toolbox, you want a spanner. Every size of spanner except the one you want, isn't it? The big ones, the small one. Or you want one tool and every other tool's there. But it's not like that with whatever God needs it to be, that's what it will be. So Moses has got the rod, he says, throw it down. Oh, it's a snake. Well, how did that happen? Well, the Egyptians have got all sorts of beliefs about snake gods. When they see a snake, they don't just think, oh, there's a snake. There's a snake, plus a lot of other meanings. It scares the wits out of them. Because if you're going to need a snake, well, you've got a stick, fine, but you can have a snake. But if you pick it up by the tail again, it's a rod again. God is saying, look, the thing I've put in your hand, don't tell me it's the wrong thing. You know, I've got a spoon and I need a fork. It's not like that. God says, if that's in your hand, that's what you've got, I'll make it fit. It'll be what you need to do what needs to be done, because I'm going to be in this. This is the story to Israel. So it certainly becomes a snake. And I encourage you to do this. Go through the book of Exodus. Jory's got 3 pens in his top pocket. And they're for colour coding things. Well, go through in your Bible, if you've got a spare one, mark in some colour every time you come to Moses and the rod, what he did with it, what God told him to do with it, how it was sufficient in God's hand to deal with the next situation, the next crisis, the next problem. I just wrote a few verses here. Exodus 7:7. It becomes blood, it becomes frogs, it becomes lice, it even becomes a road through the sea. Even becomes a road through the sea, a dry road through a wet sea. And a bit more than that, we'll see in a minute. So Exodus 7:17. I will smite with the rod that is in mine hand upon the waters that are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Amazing. It was a snake, now it's water turning to blood. Exodus 8:5. Stretch forth thine hand with thy rod over the streams and cause frogs to come up. Exodus 8:16. Stretch out thy rod and smite the dust that it may become lice. I'm just picking a few here. 9:23. Moses stretched forth his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, lightning conductor almost. And Moses in 14:16 here in Exodus, lift up thy rod over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry land through the midst of the sea. Well, it's years back now, people got very excited when they built a channel tunnel, a rabbit hole, a mouse hole under the channel. But you know, God can do better than that, and he did so 3,500 or whatever many years ago it was. God goes to the Red Sea with this rod, and it's quite enough to make a dry, I'll say dual carriage, a mighty roadway through the sea, enough for Israel all to march through. And if you're the sort of person that likes doing calculations, and you work out how many Israelites there were, and you can if and but about how many men, how many women, how many children, how many sheep, how many, and you know, you read an army book about how many roads it takes to move an army of so many thousand people, so many miles. It's all there in the manuals if you're in the military. Well, you needed a pretty broad front to march Israel across overnight between midnight and sunrise, and they did it. God provided a wide, and it was dry, it wasn't even wet. They went over a dry shore, but it was all done because Moses said, just get the rod out. It's the rod of God, and it's going to be sufficient to do that. I'm going to turn that around now, because I want you to see this point. God is not limited by our things, and the rod can become anything. On this occasion at the Red Sea, what they got was lots of water, and they needed dry rock to walk on. The rod is the answer. When they get over the side and they're out in the wilderness, they've got loads of dry rock. Now they need water. Think about this one. You've got loads of water and you want dry rock to walk on. And then in the desert, you've got loads of jolly dry rock, and what you want now is some nice water. God says it's the same answer, still the rod. You still only need the rod, whether you want dry rock where there's a sea, or whether you want rivers of water where there's a desert. Can't make this point too strong, because God wants us to understand this, that the rod of God it's enough. It can be anything. We're never in the wrong place with the wrong. It's the rod of God. We've got to understand it, that God is infinite. God may choose the most foolish things, it seems, but they are sufficient. How are we going to manage? Well, take the rod of God in your hand, and under God, understand it. God will make it to us. God will say, get the rod out. He'll lead us into all truth. But you know what I'm referring to there, because in Numbers 20 verses 8 to 11, God said to Moses, take the rod. They're in the desert now, they're dying, I think, from lack of water. And he says, take the rod and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water. And thou shalt bring forth water unto them out of the rock. So shalt thou give the congregation and their beasts drink. But notice that passage started with, take the rod, speak to the rock. There's another important lesson here. We've got to be very careful how we use the rod of God. It is the word of God, but we can't go around bashing things with it, that we take it into our head, lose our patience with people and things, not what God said. Because Moses didn't get into the promised land because he actually lost his temper and got the rod. He got the rod, but he then started misusing it, bashing at things in a way that God wasn't in it at all. It was a misuse of the rod that happened. We read there in Numbers 20. It says, and Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. So he got started right. We do that, just get started. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. Now this is where his human emotion and bit of naughtiness takes over. And he said to them, hear now ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? Oh, it's getting a bit big for his boots at this point. It's not what God's got. We're going to do it. You're so used to this. We're going to do it. You've driven us to it. Oh dear. Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly. And the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, and wasn't pleased at all by this, because humanity had gone beyond what divinity had instructed or wanted. It wasn't God's loving way here. Because you believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore shall ye not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. And that's what happened, because it's not, Moses thought it was a rerun of Exodus 17 verses 5 and 6, where they were to hit. The instruction there was take the rod and hit it, and water was to come out. Once he was to do it. We won't read it all this. The Lord said, take with thee the elders and thy rod, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it. That was the instruction in Exodus, and Moses did it. It was right, it worked. In Numbers, a second time, it's not the same thing. This time God said, take the rod, you need to hold it, but this time you've got to just talk to the rock. And you know, we in our humanity think we know, we've learned that, we'll do it our way now. We know, must we get water, must we get you rebels? And we start insulting the sheep or the congregation because we're human, we lose it. Oh dear. And it was very costly. God doesn't want us to do that. You see, all these things actually were symbolic. They were doing things, but they were symbolic, because that rock was it had a meaning. The rock that followed them was Christ. And yes, Christ is going to be smitten once, not twice. Once is enough to finish work of salvation. And so that was the first time, the smiting, and that fitted, and out came the water they needed. The second time it was a matter of speaking, but they're lashing out. The symbol that God intended is all broken because what they're doing in their humanity. So I'm saying this to myself, Lord, oh Lord, keep us true to understand the power of your rod and how but Lord, keep us to keep our tempers, to understand your spirit, to know how you work. We've got the rod in our hand, but let's not start lashing out with the rod as though it's some sort of weapon to hit people with. It's not. It's not our job to do that. It's our job to bring truth and to bring teaching in love. There are times when we have to be stronger than that, but it's what God wants. It's what God tells us to do on that occasion. So the rod can be misused, and it can be used with venom and cruelty in the hands of people when they go too far. I mean, we know our hearts, we know ourselves, what we're capable of. So under God, keep us humble, Lord, to be like you in the way that we're using those. So that's what happened. Very quickly then, it became everything that they needed. Getting near the end now. How long have we got? 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
All right. The promise, the power and the purpose of the rod is all about ruling on earth. That's what it's for. Revelation 12 verse 5. She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. A sceptre of iron, that is it. And her child was caught up to God and to his throne. In Revelation 19 and 15. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. We've looked at Micah 5 verse 1, which says, they shall smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth to me, that is to be a ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. The rod that we have is because God wants Israel to rule in his name. He gives us delegated power, not because we're anything, but he hands us the insignia and says, I'll let you hold the rod. Wow, I'm trusting you because you trust me, because it's a proportion. The more we trust him, the more God can trust us to do it the way he wants it done. And that's the thought. We mustn't ever get caught up with the rod and what we can do with the rod. Look at me, I've got the rod. That's not the thought at all. But he'll rule them with a rod of iron. And God says to Israel, I'll cause you to pass under the rod. And I'll bring you into the bond of the covenant. There was a thing where the shepherds used to, they'd go along, they were to tithe animals, and so they 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, that one goes that way. They had a rod and they were separating out the gifts that there was to be proper giving to God. It was all done using the rod and counting 10. Because it'll be like that. The ministry, the whole ministry of Israel will be an ordered affair, and there will be a giving. But I really just haven't got time to develop that thought really properly. But I will finish with this thing. You can tell who's the Lord's and Israel, if they're right with God, and individual Christians if they're right with God. Show them the rod of God and tell them about the rod of God and see what their response is when they hear the text of the Bible about the rod of God. Revelation 19:15, he shall rule them with a rod of iron. Ezekiel 20, I will cause you to pass under the rod. Put you under my count, my discipline. I'll bring you into the bond of the covenant. I tell you this, the enemies of God hate him. You say anything like that, oh, someone's telling me what to do. No, I'm not being put under the rod of God. God's rod? How dare he? He can't choose, he can't tell me. those who don't know God, those who are not gods, those who don't understand the mind, a little bit of the mind, because they've got to understand the love of God. All the hair goes up, the teeth come out. They've heard about the rod of God. But you say it to a Christian, and they're lining up with King David in Psalm 20.